are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. This is Michael Caselli. I'm the editor-in-chief of iGamingBusiness.com. And iGaming Business Magazine. And we're going to be holding a webinar today on the state of New Jersey's new sports betting referendum. So New Jersey, as a way of background, has decided that, well, the people of New Jersey have decided that they want sports betting within their state. This is contrary to the previous law in New Jersey, which did not allow sports betting within the state, and which is pretty consistent across the United States. So in most states, sports betting is banned federally. However, if New Jersey's referendum, which will now cause a legal battle between the state of New Jersey and the federal government over this issue, is successful, then other states will also be able to hold referendum on sports betting. And it may result in sports betting being allowed in the United States for the first time ever. Ladies and gentlemen, to present this topic, we have Joe Brennan Jr., who is the chairman of iMEGA. Joe.
Good morning from Washington, D.C. Good afternoon in London. Can you see my slide on the screen there, Michael?
Yes. Yes.
Michael? All right, you can see that? Okay. So I'll try and keep this as brief as possible as far as going through the background, but I thought the background was important because those who have just a kind of casual knowledge of what New Jersey has been trying to do regarding sports betting, they do know that this requires challenging a federal law and what all that entails and what the prospects may be. So we'll just jump in here really quick. The background on this, the federal law in question is PASPA, the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992. And to give some perspective, in 1992, I was doing postgraduate work in Princeton, New Jersey, completely and totally unaware of all of this. But PASPA specifically prohibits the expansion of state-regulated sports wagering. It says absolutely nothing really about illegal wagering. It says nothing particularly about, we'll say, underground wagering via organized crime. What it simply acts as is it bars states from enacting licensed sports pools and lotteries. The irony of all this is that the law was originally crafted by Senator Bill Bradley, who's the retired Democratic senator from New Jersey. Senator Bradley is a basketball, both professional and college basketball Hall of Famer and a Rhodes Scholar. Senator Bradley is rather patrician in his bearing. He's a very intelligent man and was an outstanding senator for New Jersey. It just happened, this one was a little unusual for Senator Bradley in that this was what would be considered a piece of values-based legislation. When Senator Bradley authored this law, it was in response to nothing. There were no cheating scandals. There was nothing as high profile, say, as the cricket cheating scandals, betting scandals that you had earlier this year in the UK. There was no mass public outcry. There was nothing. There's really no glaring need for enacting this law other than Senator Bradley had been concerned that some states were beginning to talk about expanding the licensing of sports wagering. Senator Bradley was pushing for a complete and total ban on all sports wagering in the United States. What he had to settle for was that ban being enacted in all but 4 states. 4 states, Nevada, Montana, Oregon, and Delaware at the time, had legislation on their books permitting the activity or were actually engaged in taking action, obviously Montana being the most notable. So while he fell short of his goal, Senator Bradley fell short of his goal of getting a complete ban, the professional sports leagues and also the NCAA, the governing body for college athletics here in the United States, were fairly satisfied with the ban that they got. Also, as part of background, when PASPA was enacted, it's informally known as the New Jersey Rule, and the New Jersey Rule stated that in order to satisfy those who believed that it was the rights of the states to decide about gambling, not the federal government, the authors of the law decided to include a clause that said they would give a one-year window from the enactment of the law to any state that had had licensed casino gambling for the previous 10 years to be able to go to their state legislature and pass a law permitting sports betting, and they too would be grandfathered in. The interesting thing is, while New Jersey was not mentioned by name, the criteria for eligibility was so narrowly crafted that it only applied to one state, because New Jersey was the only state at that time, besides Nevada, for which this was true, that they had licensed and regulated casino gambling for at least 10 years. When the matter was taken up in New Jersey, the New Jersey Senate passed this measure rather quickly. However, the measure never even got to a floor vote in the lower house of the New Jersey legislature, the state assembly. It's generally accepted that the reason why it never even came to a floor vote was that the Speaker of the state assembly, who was a Republican, was trying to negate the effect that a get out the vote campaign for sports betting may have as far as drawing higher numbers of voters from Democratic precincts. And his motivation was there was going to be a very hotly contested race for the state's governorship that year between the incumbent Governor Florio and the Republican challenger Christy Todd Whitman. And in fact, Governor Whitman won by less than 1% of the vote. So I'm sure to this day, Speaker Chuck Hytian probably felt like that was a successful strategy for him. But right now, even amongst Republicans in the state, they feel that in the long-term damage was done, particularly to the state's gaming economy, for such a short-term gain. So with New Jersey not having passed this, PASPA became effective January 1st of 1993. Fast forward 2 decades almost, and the first part of the challenge of this was a lawsuit that was filed jointly between our group, iMEGA, and then Senators Raymond Lesniak, New Jersey Senate President Stephen Sweeney, and New Jersey's Thoroughbred and Standardbred Racing Associations. I can go briefly into what grounds it was raised later on, but the interesting thing is how this became part of the politics of yet another governor's race, because later that year, then New Jersey Governor John Corzine was running for re-election against the man who would eventually unseat him, current Governor Chris Christie, who prior to running for governor was the U.S. Attorney for the state of New Jersey, the U.S. Department of Justice's highest representative in the state. The suit was filed in March of 2009 and unfortunately was dismissed in March of 2011. The reason being was that the federal judge felt that the plaintiffs, iMEGA and the state senators, that we lacked the standing because we couldn't show any type of, quote, injury that we had sustained due to the federal law, PASPA, being in place. iMEGA couldn't show any kind of lost earnings for its association's members. Senator Lesniak and Senator Sweeney could not show any injury that New Jersey could not pass any laws. In fact, the Justice Department said, somewhat paradoxically, that New Jersey was free to pass any law they like regarding sports betting. It's just that the paradox was they could go ahead and pass a law, but the federal government, according to the Department of Justice, had the final say, and their position was, PASPA was clear that New Jersey could not start any kind of state regulating of sports betting. Now, the one thing that was interesting about that decision was that Judge Brown, the federal judge, when he dismissed it, he did say that even though there was no current injury, that should New Jersey vote on November 8th, this past November 8th, should the state voters approve the referendum to allow sports betting, that indeed then there would be the potential for the state of New Jersey suffering an injury. You would have the Constitution of New Jersey and the popular will of New Jersey's voters coming into direct conflict with the federal law that had been passed. If that was the case, Judge Brown felt that the state would then have the grounds to return to court and challenge the federal law. The referendum, again, it occurred this past November 8th. It was a bill that we had worked with Senator Lesniak, Senator Jim Whalen of Atlantic City, Senator Jeff Van Drew, also of Atlantic County, and Senate President Steve Sweeney to get through. And because of New Jersey's Constitution and the Casino Control Act of 1979, anytime New Jersey wants to offer a new category of wagering, so New Jersey already permits casino games, it already permits horse racing, New Jersey has a lottery, but sports betting would represent a new category. As a result, it's a requirement within the New Jersey Constitution that the voters of the state approve this. So after a year-long campaign, state voters approved by a 64% to 36% margin. I have to say that even though we were, from the get-go, we felt that we had an excellent chance to win, I'd be lying if I said that I expected quite that margin, almost a 2-to-1 margin when it did pass. Besides the overwhelming support for the sports betting vote, one of the other, I think, great benefits, particularly for the long term for our prospects, was that Governor Christie came out and embraced the sports betting vote in advance, a week in advance. And then since the vote, has been very forward in committing both himself and, just as importantly, the state's Attorney General's office of going back to federal court and challenging PASPA on the behalf of New Jersey. And the quote there at the bottom, I think, is an example of why Governor Christie is probably the best-known governor in the United States right now. The people of New Jersey want sports betting, which is clear to me now, by a 2-to-1 ratio. One of my jobs as governor is to listen to the people. He's obviously taken not only the tenor of the state's voters, but if you look at not only the Tea Party but also the Occupy movement, there is a lot of grassroots voter sentiment and a lot of grassroots voter activity here in the United States. So these types of direct democracy endeavors, things like statewide referendums, one, the governor really couldn't stand in front of it practically if he wanted to, but I think that the governor has been consistent with his politics and his themes broadly by embracing this as much as he did. And in fact, actually, when he made this statement, he also said that if the NFL had a problem, they had his phone number and they know where to reach him. So the reason why this is of great benefit is beyond the particulars about the lawsuit and the grounds on which New Jersey can challenge, the legitimacy that having the highest profile governor in the United States, a former federal prosecutor in the Department of Justice, who was appointed by President George W. Bush, and his aggressive embrace of this activity. It really, I don't think that any other governor in the country right now would have the bona fides that Governor Christie would have on this issue. He comes from a law enforcement background. He comes from a federal prosecutor background. The fact that he is saying that this is an activity that could and should be regulated at the state level in order to protect not only the state's gaming industry, but also to protect the integrity of the games. It's beyond value, and it's been incredibly helpful in improving the media profile. And once the enabling legislation has been passed, will be particularly valuable in speeding this along through the federal court system. The basis, very quickly, of this, New Jersey and we have held that the law, PASPA, is inherently unconstitutional. The U.S. Constitution says that the federal government only has powers that the states have expressly granted to it. The gambling regulation is not one of them. The federal government does not regulate any form of gambling. And this is particularly, not only for the sports betting question, but also for the internet gambling question as well, is particularly important, and we can touch on that briefly later. The defendant in this suit, once it's refiled, will be the U.S. Department of Justice, because they answer all matters requiring that are challenges to U.S. Constitution or to U.S. law. There's a bit of irony in this, in that when PASPA was being drafted, then Senator Joe Biden, now the Vice President of the United States, was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And Senator Biden had asked the Department of Justice for an advisory opinion on the law as it was being drafted. The Department of Justice came back to Senator Biden and noted that they disagreed with the law. They felt that it was potentially unconstitutional. They said that Congress had historically left the decision on how to raise revenue, in other words, taxes, to the states. As a result, this led to questions regarding federalism, and in particular the 10th Amendment, where the Constitution says that the federal government only has powers that the states grant to them. The states have never granted the power to regulate gambling to the federal government, so thus the conflict. The third, and for some people, one of the most troubling aspects of this is that PASPA, in effect, deputizes the professional sports leagues to police this law by bringing civil actions against parties or states that would try to enact legal sports betting. And some scholars feel that is a particularly egregious, because frankly, in what universe should the NFL have any power over a sovereign state like the state of New Jersey? Regarding this lawsuit, right now the timeline from beginning to end, we estimate you're looking at anywhere from a 2 to 3 year period. Once New Jersey has completed the enabling legislation, Senator Lesniak and Governor Christie have indicated that they would like to have this done before the new year. It has already passed through the Senate Gaming Committee. It did so last week. It's expected to go through the Assembly Committee sometime in the next week, and will come to a floor vote before the end of the year. And Governor Christie has indicated that he will immediately sign it and immediately set the Attorney General to work on bringing suit in federal court. One thing about the enabling legislation, one issue that is coming up is that when New Jersey's voters did go to the polls, the question was whether they approved of the state licensing legal wagering at the state's casinos and horse racing tracks. Since the vote, Senators Whalen and Van Drew and Lesniak have indicated that they would also like to add the ability to wager on an intra-state internet sports betting platform. And it remains to be seen whether that will stay in the enabling legislation that gets voted on before the end of the year. We're not particularly concerned about whether it is or it is not, simply because the internet gambling legislation, which was refiled back in August, states that any game that is permitted and is licensed and regulated in a New Jersey casino could be offered by that casino online. If sports betting were to be permitted in New Jersey, that would fall under that law. As far as what this means for the United States, should the law be overturned, PASPA be overturned, and you know you've, as a brief side, you know you've really stumbled onto something when the people who were your biggest critics 2 years ago, when you filed this thing, who said that New Jersey didn't have a chance in hell of getting voters to vote for this or overturning the law. Well, when you then read the day after the vote that your biggest critics have apparently now become your biggest advocates, with people now, those same critics now saying that New Jersey had excellent prospects, or saying that it was inevitable that this federal law, this federal sports ban would be overturned, I can tell you from where I'm sitting, it's quite breathtaking and satisfying. But should PASPA be overturned, this would not lead to immediate full nationalized sports betting. Again, this would return to the states. Right now there's 4 states, Nevada, Montana, Oregon, and Delaware, that have sports betting laws on their books. New Jersey is about to become the 5th. But should PASPA be overturned, the other 45 states, it would then be left to them to decide whether or not they wanted to enact legislation permitting legal sports wagering. So if you're living in New Jersey right now and the law is overturned, obviously your prospects look good to be able to bet on sports. If you're living, say, in Alabama or Wyoming or Washington State or California, the prospects are less clear because there's been no indication as of yet where those states' legislatures stand on enacting legal sports wagering. All the states will be required to approve their own laws permitting the activity. The reason why this is, I think, particularly relevant for the internet gambling community is that, again, as we move forward in this long consideration of how to normalize the internet gambling industry here in the United States, there seems to have been this Manichaean approach that it's either all federal or all state. I've said many times that even though we've been recognized for the level of work that we've done at the state level, that we would be perfectly happy if the federal government today decided that they were going to legalize internet gambling nationally. The problem is that while that's a fine ideal, it simply is not practical and has absolutely no root in the current American experience. Gambling is, as I said before, gambling is an activity that has been the purview of the states. The states use it as a de facto job creation and tax creation system. Federal government regulates no form of gambling unless you consider the ban against expanded sports wagering a de facto regulation by prohibiting states from getting into the business. This is an issue that has, it's been long in coming. When the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals several years ago, when it upheld the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act and the challenge that actually we brought against the law, the court was very clear in saying that it was left to the states, not the federal government, but the states, to decide the permissibility of internet gambling within their borders. They made it clear that iMEGA made no underlying activity illegal other than the utilization of credit cards and bank accounts to fund these activities. But again, it recognized that the only way that there is a violation in that regard is if there is a violation of state law that then triggers the federal law. You see that right now at play in the Black Friday prosecutions. So what does this all mean? I think this week has been rather timely in the news cycle in this regard. The federal iPoker bill. There's been much speculation about that over the course of the last 2 months, driven by parties that felt that they had a good chance of having it considered as part of the congressional supercommittee's deliberations. There never really seemed to be an awful lot of momentum behind that. My understanding is that the supercommittee considered it, but considered many things, and obviously never came to any agreement on this. Just the other day, I had an opportunity to hear Congressman Joe Barton of Texas, who's the sponsor of, obviously, the Barton iPoker bill in the House of Representatives, talk about his legislation. I'll give Congressman Barton marks for political bravery in that in front of a table filled with state lottery representatives, he made it clear that his bill would not permit state lotteries to operate this activity. But while Congressman Barton felt that that they had the votes in the House of Representatives to pass his bill, we've seen no indication of that. The prevailing sentiment regarding his bill in the House of Representatives is ambivalence, frankly. This is an issue that on Capitol Hill is driven by just small parties of advocates and opponents on the fringes, but the great mass of the U.S. Congress is either ambivalent or unaware of this bill. And also regarding the prospects of Senator Reid and Senator John Kyle bill, we've not seen anything yet, and I'll defer to parties that spend more time up on Capitol Hill lobbying in favor of this, but we've seen no indication yet that there's any grand bargain in the works between the two senators. And I think something that happened yesterday may be indicative of yet another indication of the dim prospects for a federal internet poker bill, and that was the chairman and CEO of Las Vegas Sands, Sheldon Adelson, coming out in opposition of internet gambling. This is key because obviously Sheldon is probably one of the biggest Republican Party donors. He has a lot of influence just broadly on the Republican Party as a donor, but also specifically with Senator Kyle. They are a large part of the American Gaming Association and the Nevada Resort Association. So with Mr. Adelson coming down quite definitively against internet gambling, it really strikes a blow in presenting a unified front in Washington on behalf of the casino companies in favor of this activity. Obviously, we're not cheerleading against this, but I think, again, it shows that in just a short amount of time between the failure of the supercommittee to take up a federal iGaming bill, the announcement of the retirement of Congressman Barney Frank, who had been iGaming's biggest advocate up on Capitol Hill, and now such a public opposition to internet gambling by one of the Republican Party's biggest fundraisers and donors, you would have to say that the game has definitively switched to the states. The reason is, again, as we said, there just do not seem to be compelling numbers behind this. There does not seem to be enough money as far as tax revenue to be gleaned to satisfy the federal government. $2 billion, $4 billion a year is, relative to the size of the U.S. government, a drop in the bucket, and does not seem to be significant enough to raise the issue above the level of ambivalence with the majority of the members of the U.S. Congress. Something that may also be telling in that the tide is turning in favor of this being a state-level solution is the announcement by Nevada Gaming, that they would begin taking applications for licensure for being providers for intrastate internet gambling in Nevada, even ahead of even having regulations for the activity. Nevada Gaming said, don't let that stop you. Please send your application in now. And what's interesting about this is the fact that the Nevada Resort Association has been silent on this matter. If you recall back in March, when Nevada introduced a PokerStars sponsored bill into the state legislature regarding intrastate internet gambling and licensure, Nevada Gaming, or the Nevada Resort Association, so the Harrah's and Wynn and MGM and those companies, came down like a ton of bricks on top of that effort and managed to get it squashed. Now you have Nevada Gaming moving forward, and there's been zero protest from those members, and it may be that those companies, Harrah's, MGM, and others, have decided that if they've not seen sufficient enough movement at the federal level, or they feel that the near-term prospects for federal legislation are not strong enough, that perhaps they have to start getting into the state-level game. The one other thing I did want to mention about this is oftentimes you'll hear a great deal of talk about iGaming at the federal level in the context of Senator Reid, in that he is the Senate Majority Leader and is, quote, one of the most powerful members of Congress. And that is indeed true. However, he only has a single vote. And while he is influential, he needs to get the votes from the other 99 senators in the U.S. Senate. And what I think the industry has to begin to ask itself about federal level prospects is, where is Senator Reid going to get his votes from? And that it's not certain that he can even deliver members of his own party, his own political allies, to vote for any bill that he may propose, let alone his opponents on the other side. I've yet to hear a compelling narrative from the federal lobby that tells me why a Democratic senator from a gaming state like New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Iowa votes in favor of this bill. In New Jersey and Iowa in particular, the in-state casino industry has indicated that they want to be able to offer internet gambling. They do not want to see a federal gaming solution. And given that, we'll say like Senator Menendez from New Jersey or Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa, why, when particularly Senator Menendez is going to be up for re-election here in the next year, what incentive a Democratic senator from a gaming state that has indicated that it wants to license and regulate this activity on a state level, what incentive does he have to vote for a federal bill? I think the other consideration you need to have is the status of the Speaker of the House, John Boehner. John Boehner hails from one of the newest gaming states, Ohio. Ohio just 2 years ago passed their own referendum in order to permit casino gambling in the state. The reason behind this was not only to get gaming tax dollars, but also job creation in Ohio's cities. They've been particularly hard hit in the downturn in the economy. Since there is a sentiment in many states that or I should say not a sentiment, but a concern on how internet gambling may affect the bottom line dollars of the brick and mortar industry, again, you have to ask yourself, what is the incentive for Speaker Boehner, who has to run in Ohio next year for votes so he could be reelected to Congress and continue as Speaker of the House? What incentive Speaker Boehner has of bringing to a floor vote any bill, any iGaming bill, that may or may not have a negative impact on his state's own nascent gambling industry? So again, this is not intended, these comments are not intended to show any kind of opposition to federal legislation. I think it rather is just taking a hard look at what the prospects are and how, and how gaming is still a state issue, a state-by-state issue. We started off chatting about sports, and the reason why the federal ban is likely to be overturned is because it is constitutionally flawed in that it interferes with the state's right to raise revenue as they see fit. States have decided whether or not to permit gambling within their borders. The federal government regulates no form of gambling. And it is likely, at least in our estimation, that the same will be true for internet gambling of any sort. It will be determined on a state-by-state basis because that's where history has led us. States have determined gradually over the course of 40 years whether or not to permit casino gambling or lotteries or bingo halls or indeed sports betting. It does not seem to be, there does not seem to be any compelling rationale as to why the states wouldn't also determine for themselves the status of internet gambling within their own borders. So with that, if there are any questions or comments, Michael, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Joe. We have some functionality on our webinar software that we'd like to try to use today. If you've got a microphone, you could use the raise hand option on your screen, and then we will choose you. Once you've been chosen, you can then speak into your microphone and ask a question. It makes the event a little bit more interactive. If no one has a microphone, or if you don't have a microphone, you could always type your questions in. So if anyone would like to ask a question, please hit the raise hand button now. Okay, Joe, let's start with some questions that have been typed in. Let's see, the most recent is from Rick, and he says, you're missing some very big issues regarding internet gaming. Technical issues that make it impractical to enforce interstate internet traffic, international obligations, and your estimate of federal revenue is very low. Joe, why are your federal revenue estimates correct? And do you agree that there are technical issues making it impractical to enforce? Because I'm not sure that most people do.
Well, there have been some. First, I'll say the estimates of federal revenue are all over the map. I've not done any personal estimate, but I've drawn estimates from everywhere, from the sponsored federal estimates, like from PricewaterhouseCoopers and other parties. So it's not my estimate. I'm going on what the federal lobby has used. Second, there's been absolutely no demonstration that it's impractical or impossible to regulate internet gambling on a state-by-state basis. I think that is something that is often asserted by people who want to make a hard case against regulating at the state level in favor of their preferred notion of regulating at the federal level. Obviously, the technology exists to do so. I won't go into any great depth, but everybody, I'm certain, who's been on this have been, have seen the companies that have been at everything from G2E to the ICE show to the iGaming Super Show, companies that specialize this, not only in a gaming sense, but also I live here in Washington, D.C., which is probably the network security capital of the universe. And I can tell you from my dealings with people who are in the Homeland Security or Department of Defense industries here as contractors and suppliers to the federal government, not only is the technology available, the execution level for doing this for intrastate internet gambling, in their estimation, is rudimentary, simple, grade school level. So I think people need to take a broader look outside of our own industry into other industries to be able to see that secure networks that are geo-limited are not only possible but relatively easily executed upon. As far as the economics, again, this seems to be a saw of people who are in particular coming at this from a a preference from poker, and there's always the critical mass questions, oh, can states really generate a significant number of players and therefore a significant amount of liquidity on the network to make it worthwhile? And of course they can. When you look at countries as small as Denmark that are doing this on a country basis, of course it's possible. I think one of the things that people who constantly make these arguments, I think one of the things that they fail to realize, I do understand that they're making these arguments because they're trying to make it in favor of a federal solution, but I think they do damage to their own cause, because all they do is give opponents of internet gambling broadly, whether at the state level or the federal level, ammunition to say that, oh, well, the technology is not in place to be able to regulate this. Mr. Adelson of Las Vegas Sands, indeed, apparently indicated this in his objection. Mr. Adelson is saying that it can't be done on a federal level or an international level, not a state level. So I think people have to be a little more careful about saying what is and what is not technologically possible. And I think they have to start looking beyond the industry to see that being able to do age and identity verification and geolocation and vectoring and things like that are being done on a state-by-state basis in the online banking industry, in the online brokerage industry, and indeed in other information systems, and stop using it as a way to oppose progress in favor of the type of progress that they would prefer.
Okay. Now we're going to use our raise your hand option, and Joe Gallagher has a question. Joe. Joe, are you online? You had your hand raised.
Yes, I do. I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe Brennan, it's Joe Gallagher here. I'm just curious to get your opinion on, with the NFL and professional sports and the NCAA getting involved and lifting their objection for financial remuneration with the gaming industry, do you think that is one of the major impediments of holding everything up and just putting almost like a stop sign up in front of all this?
If you're asking, Joe, are you asking based on a revenue share? Should they be getting revenue from this? Would that help them to
Absolutely.
To couch their objections?
Absolutely.
I think for some of the leagues it would. I think for the NFL it would not. The NFL, the economics of the NFL are similar to the economics of the English Premier League. However, NFL owners and the National Football League itself is used to being the strongest party at the table when it comes to negotiation, and they are not particularly adept at multi-party or negotiations with multiple parties on the other end. I mean, the reason why the NFL has been able to generate so much money is that they have a single product that they license to a limited number of parties, whether it's the broadcast rights, merchandising rights, things of that nature. And that's why they've been able to generate a significant amount of money, billions of dollars for their TV rights, billions of dollars to be shared from licensing jerseys and other products. With sports betting, it then becomes a question of who do they negotiate with? If there's to be a grand revenue sharing agreement, there's no Fox or B-Sky B or anybody like that of sports betting. There's no grand association on the other side of this with whom they would negotiate. Sports betting is by its nature fragmented. There's hundreds of websites. There's tens of thousands of local bookies. Who do you negotiate with if you are the NFL in order to realize the kind of revenue that might get them to change their mind? So I don't necessarily think it's, if we haven't made a good enough proposal to them to cut them in on the action yet. I think the NFL, they're smart people over there, and they realize it's going to be difficult for them to monetize this on the other side if indeed it becomes legalized? Who do they go to? Obviously, the model that is probably best for them to use as a guide is the English Premier League, in that there's no single sports betting provider, official sports betting provider to English football, because, of course, there can't be. There's no exclusivity that the Premier League can grant to. They can't limit betting on the Premier League to Bet365 or to Sporting Bet or to Ladbrokes. It's done everywhere. So there's no real exclusivity right that would either they could confer, or that would be of value, I think, to a commercial operator. Where the value comes is in partnering, where we'll say like Betfair is the official betting partner of Manchester United. Didn't do them much good last night, but they are the official betting partner. And so that's a licensing deal. It's a marketing deal where Betfair pays a fee of millions of dollars in order to be able to advertise in the stadium and to advertise on the websites and other things. You see in the British Premier League the number of shirt sponsors now between Bodog and 188Bet and 12Bet. All of these sites that are online gambling sites, they are either sponsorship deals or partnering deals. They're not revenue sharing deals. And I think the NFL, they see that in no small part because there are NFL owners who own English Premier League teams. You look at Manchester United. The Glazer family also owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The ownership group of Arsenal are partial owners of I think it's the St. Louis Rams. So there's enough visibility of ownership between the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball in the Premier League alone to see what the economics are and what the possibility for revenue is. So I don't think that right now there's any grand bargain to be made with them on this that will get them to object. I do, however, think that if PASPA is overturned and this does go forward, you will see an effort by the leagues and the NCAA to do similar to what is somewhat afoot by sports rights owners in Europe right now, to try and make a case legislatively that they should be given a percentage of revenue by operators for taking those wagers. I do think, however, it will be very difficult for them to make that case.
Thank you, Joe. Actually, in the United Kingdom, one of the big revenue drivers for the leagues is actually the sale of streaming video sports rights. So I think that would that's generally the easiest way for the leagues and for the teams to actually get revenue. So essentially, what you're doing is when you're gambling on somewhere like a Bet365, you'll get a live stream from whatever sport that might be, and anyone streaming that's going to pay them. So that's a pretty easy way to do it rather than trying to collect the actual percentages of the bets. Which is
one thing, just real quickly on that, Michael, one thing, though, is if you go to, say, Bet365 and you get streaming video, you're not getting streaming video of the Premier League. You'll get streaming video, I believe, of, like, say, the Championship or the Empower League, but they do not have a feed. At least, as far as I know, they do not have a feed for the Premier League. Here in the U.S., the drop-off after the top 4 professional leagues and Division I college football is rather steep. There are no lower leagues that generate significant levels of broadcast interest. So the NFL could potentially, in an academic sense, license their broadcast stream to, say, an online operator to help enhance their live betting product. You would probably see the broadcast companies that currently hold the rights, like NBC and CBS and ESPN, object to that unless they themselves were the ones who were running the wagering option, which of course is a possibility.
Okay, we have another hand up. Steve Brubaker, please, can you ask your question to Joe? Steve, do you have your microphone on? Okay, if not, Steve's also put his question by writing it in. He just wants you to expand a bit on the timing of the DOJ challenge, when it begins and when it might end, and when does New Jersey starts? When does your estimate that New Jersey might start sports betting?
Well, it's difficult with the federal courts to say definitively what the time is going to be. You can't schedule it. I do know that, well, Senator Lesniak would be the first person who would say that when New Jersey files, they're going to ask for a summary judgment from the bench, which means that they would submit their brief, but that they would expect the federal judge that hears the case, rather than taking months to decide, to take in discovery, take in multiple briefings, hear oral arguments. Senator Lesniak feels that PASPA, it's plain on its face, it's constitutional defects, and that they get an immediate judgment from the bench declaring PASPA unconstitutional. Even if that were to happen, I think it's an absolute given that either the Department of Justice or the sports leagues will appeal to federal appeals courts. I would find it hard to believe if this particular challenge did not go all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. There's just too many issues involved with it. In the words of Chad Millman of ESPN, who talked about this, he said it's just too sexy. It's got sports, it's got gambling, it's got constitutional issues, it's got states' rights versus federalism. There's too many of those big questions that the Supreme Court likes to address for them not to want to take this up. And I can absolutely guarantee that whoever loses at the lower level, be it New Jersey or the Department of Justice and the sports leagues, they will absolutely appeal to the higher courts until this thing has been exhausted. One thing that I will say is that given the high profile of this, it's reasonable to expect that this would be on an escalated timeline. Oftentimes challenges to federal laws, they can take, sometimes up to 10 years before they're finally resolved definitively at we'll say, the Supreme Court level. What's more likely is because, one, this is now going to be pressed by the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, as directed by Governor Christie. When you have a sovereign state, challenging a law, it obviously creates a more significant situation than if it were a private party, say like iMEGA, challenging the law. There's more immediacy to it, particularly because New Jersey is saying that they need to be able to add this activity to the state's gaming industry in order to immediately reverse its financial decline. And New Jersey also, it's not just for the raising of dollars. New Jersey's tax dollars are that they gain from gambling in the state, casino gambling, they're obligated for health care for the elderly. Those dollars, because of the decline in Atlantic City's fortunes, there's been a decline in money available for health care in New Jersey at precisely the wrong time, because the demand for those dollars are going up. So there's a compelling case for seeing this put on an escalated timeline. But as far as being able to put a number to this, I think the over-under on this one is 2.5 years right now. I would bet slightly on the over. I would see it being on the outside of about 3 years. But you just look recently when Delaware wasn't trying to challenge the constitutionality of PASPA. Delaware was simply trying to get the federal courts to allow them the latitude to offer more sports betting options than they had originally had on the books prior to the enactment of PASPA. From stem to stern, from being originally filed in court to actually a summary judgment from the bench of the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals, took less than 6 months. So I do not think it's unreasonable that to think that this can move along rather quickly if the courts decide.
Okay, our final question will go to Stuart Hodner. Stuart, I'm going to unmute you so you can use your microphone.
Hi there, Joe.
Hi, Stu. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
So, could you give us some flavor for the politics of internet gaming and betting in New Jersey, or is there unanimity on that point between, say, northern and southern state interests that the state wants and needs passed by overturn and wants to go forward with an interstate internet betting and gaming option? And I appreciate that the referendum was passed, but are all of the different parties at the political level in New Jersey on side this?
Well, first in New Jersey, you have to, at this point in time, you have to subdivide them into two separate issues: sports on one side, internet gambling on the other. Regarding sports, it's been pretty clear both from the votes in the legislature last year in passing the bill to provide for the referendum on sports, and then also with the ballot returns on November 8th, that both North and South Jersey concur on sports betting. This is something that the state wants. This is in part because the sports betting will be permitted not only in the South at the Atlantic City casinos, but also in the North at the state's racetracks, which are centered in the Meadowlands and Monmouth County. So by throwing a bone to both regions will benefit from sports betting. It was fairly simple to have both regions embrace this. When it comes to the question of internet gambling right now, I guess what you would go by would be the voting on the first intrastate internet gambling bill last year, the same bill that was sent to Governor Christie's desk. And again, that bill had drew its support from over 90% of the legislature voted in favor of it, both Republican and Democrat, North and South. And for internet gambling, it's because the reason why you see the support both North and South is that both North and South have something to gain from it. Obviously, with the casinos being the actual license holders and operators for internet gambling, they see a direct benefit. But also with the kind of investment and recruiting and the establishment of new businesses within the state of New Jersey to service the industry, that's something that can also benefit the North. You know, there are right now, say, software companies that supply the gaming industry in New Jersey that are located in North Jersey. So when it comes to regionalism, this is the North-South continuing ongoing debate within New Jersey has not really affected it. It's been embraced by both regions. The one issue that I would say that has come up and may complicate the prospects for this is that just this past week, Senator Jennifer Beck introduced, as she is a Republican state senator, has introduced a bill for having a referendum vote next year on the ballot to permit slot machines at the racetracks in New Jersey, in the Meadowlands and in Monmouth County. This is something that the racing industry has long wanted, and northern politicians in the state would also like to see this because they would like to see them build a casino-style industry up in their region to be able to compete with with other racetracks, obviously in other states, but also with the expansion of casino gambling that you've seen just across their borders in New York and in Connecticut and in northern Pennsylvania. That may complicate this. I mean, I would hope that it would not turn into a game of political horse trading. I'll vote for your internet gambling bill if you vote for my slot machine bill. But the Internet Gambling Bill has already been reintroduced. Senator Lesniak and Senator Whalen crafted the original bill to address most of the concerns that Governor Christie had highlighted in his veto memo. But at this time, they feel that, contrary to the governor's opinion, that it would require a referendum in order to enact Internet gambling in the state. Their feeling, and they have a strong basis of legislative findings to support this, is that casino games like blackjack, roulette, slots, bingo, are already permitted under the New Jersey Constitution, and really what this is a question of is permitting the licensed casinos to have an additional distribution channel to the ones that they already have in order to be able to do this. So they feel that the legislature is well within its power to be able to grant that franchise to the casinos. So.
Joe, thank you very much. To everyone, this presentation will be available for review or for viewing again, or for passing the link to anyone that you think might want to watch it and hasn't shown up today to the webinar at igamingbusiness.com from tomorrow. I'd like to thank Joe Brennan from iMEGA, who is the chairman of iMEGA, for this presentation. If you would like to see him live, he will be at our iGaming Super Show, which is May 23rd to 26th in Dublin. At that Super Show, we will also be introducing an iGaming primer. The primer will be the very basics of iGaming for companies that are looking to get in the space, mainly land-based companies who may not be as advanced as current operators in their knowledge of iGaming, but who really want to learn. So if you're in that position, please get in contact with us through the website igamingbusiness.com or igamingsupershow.com, and we'll get you signed up for that primer. And for most of you, I will be seeing you in London during our London affiliate conference following the International Casino Show, ICE, in London in late January. I look forward to seeing some of you there and the rest of you at the Super Show. Once again, Joe Brennan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.